Hello everyone, it's Duckfairy07. This week we are continuing with Leyline with the Guildpact brews, and next week I will start focusing on other cards. I just want to point out how absurdly good is this card. In the various brews I tried, I have absurd win rate with various good or bad domain brews I tried. Some of them are like zoo style, some of them are just regular decks with this great package like Leyline, Scion and Leyline Binding, sometimes Territorial Kavu. It's so easy to fit those in a lot of decks, and these cards are just very good, like Kavu, Scion or Draco, Leyline Binding, all high quality cards. You don't lose much, and often you also get to play very efficient consistent mana base, which does a very great job providing you with all colors, so making it even possible and easier to play counterspell in the domain mana base. So through the years I learned that when you find a build that can support counterspell and also lets you play like this domain cards that are really strong, like Kavu, Scion, Draco, Leyline Binding, this can be really strong. And I come to this build. Initially I wanted to build like Jeskai Murktide or the Ragavan Stoneforge deck that was like very popular post MH2. But then wanted to fit in the Leyline package into that deck, and this is the list I come up with, the final list that did very well for me in the leagues. And actually I played like last match I played against Mirror, but in Jeskai colors, and to be honest it felt better to be in the domain, at least for the Mirror. And yeah, so again this brew along with many more, I tried jamming the Leyline Scion combo and some having access to various good cards on the sideboard like Tear Sunder in this case. Lets you really do well against this metagame at the moment. Okay, so we get to play Ragavan, we get to play Kavu, Scion, Stoneforge Mystic, Cryptic Coat, all very decent threats on their own, but also you also get to play all the premium interactions, so Counterspell, Leyline Binding, Prismatic Ending, Lightning Bolt, Stubborn Denial, Teferi, Counterspell, like all the really premium cards in the format. It's just a kind of good stuff aggro with a very efficient mana base that can support what you're doing here pretty well. Also one survey land, pretty happy with it. A lot of people will say 20 lands, you get lucky if you ever get to do anything. But this is like a low to the ground deck with similar mana values like in regular zoo, and regular zoo has played 20 lands 4 years without a single card selection and has done well. You just have to focus on your starting hands. Often throughout the last 5-6 leagues I've been doing very well with 20 lands in this type of builds and didn't have much problems. Obviously you must keep playable hands, you can keep 0 land hands or whatever, but yeah, also some pit spells on the sideboard, some very efficient sideboard hate. Rest in peace Lockdown, very cool hate piece for a lot of decks at the moment. Once this is actually like Murktide sideboard. I started this as a Jeskai Murktide, and then I switched, made it like fit this super powerful domain cards into the list. Okay, so that's it. Subtlety, Force of Negation, Spell Snare, Fluster Storms, Explosives, Lockdowns, a lot of Cascade hate as you can see here, and that is it. So let's go check out the gameplay. Okay, so let's start from the last game because the first game was a defeat, so we are going to go through the wins first. Okay, mulliganing this one, keeping a 1-lander, but hand is very decent. If I can get a second land, I can also survive like a couple of turns on 1 land here. I have double removal. Opponent starts off with Ragavan. I'm hoping to get land. Don't get it, so I just passing, holding on my Leyline Binding. Then I get the second land, and at this point I don't want to cast my cow here. I just wanted to hold the counterspell, hoping for them to go for maybe expressive iteration. Opponent seems to be digging for lands, so I decide to use counterspell on the second preordain and then cast my Kavu. Opponent is also searching for lands. Unfortunately, they have a prismatic ending here, so I'm not able to do anything. And yeah, here opponent finds iteration, and I didn't find what I need at the right time. So now I get to resolve the fairy. Sorry, I don't get to resolve the fairy. Opponent has Force of Negation. Opponent played a lot of these pitch spells, and yeah, in this kind of game I need my Scion to be able to win. Otherwise, a pretty hard game without Scion. Opponent double iteration, a lot of pitch spells, a lot of card selection. So they now find the Stoneforge Mystic and the Cryptic Coat, and yeah, Cryptic Coat is a big problem to deal with if opponent has a bunch of mana. They can just use 2 mana to put it back into their hand, so it's very hard to remove. And in this type of games, the Stoneblades, it becomes a very serious threat and almost impossible to deal with. And that's exactly what happened. Opponent just put the Cryptic Coat onto the field, also just holding interaction entire time, and also holding 2 mana at all times to get the Cryptic Coat back. So I must use my mana to just kill these creatures while opponent is doing the Cryptic Coat thing for free. I think I was F6 there. I think my opponent tapped at one point, but I was not able to use Leyline Binding. I think I F6'd past the priority. And yeah, so opponent just at this point killed me with Cryptic Coat. I was not able to deal with it, so that was game 1. Let's check out game 2. This was the last game of the league. Basically a mirror, because my opponent is playing the deck I started with, this build, and then just added the domain stuff into it. So opponent is playing Jeskai with Ragavan, a Stoneforge Mystic, Cryptic Coats, and a lot of pitch spells like Subtlety, Force of Negation. I kept a very bad hand with Surveil Land. I was hoping to... starting with Leyline can be pretty good. And I had a turn 1 Surveil, so I think it is keepable. Not great though, definitely not a great hand. Questionably keepable, but I decided to do it, and it turned out fine. Okay, opponent here trades for Stoneforge Mystic. They have Cryptic Coat in hand. They shock in the Steam Vents, expecting them to hold the counterspell probably. So I draw the counterspell too, and draw Stoneforge Mystic, passing the turn, getting the Cryptic Coat. I also have Caldra, which my opponent doesn't know about. And also like holding counterspell for their turn was pretty good now. Opponent plays Brazen Borrower and the Cloak. And now I get to put the Caldra on field, and I'm still holding the counterspell. So I'm definitely winning this race. I have a counter to stop my opponent from killing Caldra. And Caldra is definitely what's winning me the game here. So attacking for a 5, putting my opponent to 6, casting my coat, and still holding a counterspell plus binding. Opponent tries to counter my coat, but I have my counterspell, and this means I have lethal for the next turn. So opponent can't deal with this, and it's time for game 3. Okay, before game 3, let's check out the sideboarding plan. Much better keep this time. I only boarded out like 2 bolts, nothing else. Didn't, especially on the draw, I don't feel like I need much sideboard here. Opponent started off with Ragavan into Stoneforge, pretty good start for them. They kill my Ragavan and I had another blocker, and then yeah, next turn I'll have another one. So opponent was not didn't have any more removal, so now I was able to play my Scion Draco. Next turn I can try to jam Leyline. If they don't have a removal for Leyline, this could be my way to win this one. Opponent puts a cloak into play, puts me on 11, and now I go for the Leyline. I resolve it, and now my Scion is like hexproof, lifelink, very hard to raise, almost impossible, and all my other creatures have those abilities too. And yeah, so attacking with Scion, gaining life again, playing a cloak, playing a Ragavan. Very good position here. I bounce the Shredder, and so I can attack with Ragavan, which has first strike now, so doing a lot of damage, and my opponent concedes after I cast a fairy. That was the match. Okay, so let's check out match 2. All 3 clean wins. Okay, so again I keep like a medium bad hand, but with Leyline in the starting hand. Often these risk turns out pretty fine, especially when you have like the survey land. Having a survey land seems pretty good, very happy with it. So here I get to control the top deck, and this way you don't flood out, so I was able to counter the Inquisition. They have the Underworld Cookbook, and I find another counterspell which was a decent top deck here. So in response my opponent discards a Yargle, and I exile the Cookbook and pass the turn holding another counterspell. I didn't want to fetch, of course. I don't want to go to 18, so they don't have a kill with Yargle, and I just play my Steam Vent Tapped, pass the turn. Opponent has Cavern of Souls now on the field, and this means I'm a bit afraid of their, what is it called, the creature that deals 18 damage to the face. So that was the reason why I counter this lightning bolt. If I get below 18, it seems like they were planning on just going for the Kragan. Yeah, and then they discard the Yargle, put me on 1, but this way I get to survive on 1 life, and then exile the Kraganvik, bounce the Saga, and try to stabilize. So now I'm kind of stabilized. I can dash Ragavan, play a Stoneforge, find Kaldra, and try to pressure my opponent before they get something crazy. Okay, so I play the Kaldra, I play the Stoneforge, get the Kaldra, and yeah, my opponent has Urza Saga, but hoping I'll be able to deal with it. So I bounce, I plus the Teferi, dash the Ragavan. Opponent doesn't trade with Ragavan. I get to play the Fable. Fable was pretty good here, so Fable was pretty good here. I get to discard a second Leyline. I get to discard a Stubborn Denial. Opponent finds a Pitting Needle and attacks with constructs. I go for the double block here. So I can't use my Teferi, but it is a decent situation. I get to draw two pretty nice Ragavan. Last turn here I get to kill their construct and dash Ragavan again. This time I'm also holding the Stubborn Denial. Okay, I can't play their Totsis because I'm on 1 life, but feels like I'm stabilizing again, so could be a decent position. But I also have to get a bit lucky for this one. And yeah, finally I find the card I was looking for, a Scion of Draco here. It just lets me completely stabilize, makes my Stubborn Denial online, and I cast the Scion and I also have the Ragavan dash, and now it's definitely game over. I have a kill next turn, so that is it. Okay, so let's check out the game 2. Okay, so game 2 I start. Let's check out the sideboard. This spell snare on the sideboard was pretty cool. I decided to trim on 1 coat, 1 ending, 1 Ragavan, 1 Stoneforge, 1 Leyland, just kind of trimming a lot of cards, just one of those. And yeah, opponent, I cast my Scion of Draco, and opponent concedes immediately. Very quick win. Okay, so that happens a lot actually. Like, people often just concede when they see you have combo this early. They don't have great hands and can't do much about it. So that was game over. Okay, so keeping a 1-lander here, but I also have a Ragavan, so I can connect with Ragavan and then maybe play the Scion of Draco, but I also have a Binding. So I go for the Binding and I get the treasure. So this way I can play the Scion of Draco next turn, but I find the Nakatl from the top, so I decide to go for the Nakatl immediately. And then when I find a second land, I just play the Scion, get the combo, and they have a first strike on their Kavu, so I decide to trade with Nakatl and Ragavan. Pretty good situation for me. Now I have the combo on, opponent can't attack, I'm protecting with the Stubborn Denial, and Lightning Bolt also getting Survey Land here is pretty cool. And yeah, here putting my opponent to 4 life. I can choose between holding interaction or just playing Kavu. I decide to go for Kavu here. And yeah, opponent doesn't find a solution. They need like exactly Binding. They don't find a solution and they concede. That was game 1. Let's check out game 2. And also let's check out the sideboarding plan. Again, just trimming on some cards. I decided to trim on Stubborn Denial, Counterspell. Just trim the counters a bit, trim 1 Teferi. It's 3 mana and not very easy to cast always. So here opponent starts, this time they have the Leyline. Okay, so I kill the Nakatl, play the island, hold the Spell Snare, and Spell Snare worked out very well here. I get to counter Kavu. Very nice card to have on the draw here. Okay, so this time I pass the turn, holding the counterspell, finding the full domain. Opponent doesn't have any more threats, so they just put Giganta to hand and pass the turn. Again, I had option to just cast the Scion or Stoneforge. I decided to hold the counterspell. I was expecting them to play the Giganta, so I wanted to counter that. Yeah, so they go for it, and I killed Nakatl and Kavu and Giganta now. I know my opponent doesn't have any more threats, so here I go for Stoneforge and Scion, present both of my threats. Opponent has to have a removal here for both, basically. Seems like they don't have it, and I put Caldra into play. With Scion of Draco on the field, Caldra also gets a lifelink, but they do have a binding, so I dealt the damage with Scion, so I'm good here. Attacking for 5, also bolt in hand. This game can end very quickly, so I go for Ragavan 2. I accidentally skipped the combat stuff. I wanted to attack, but accidentally just skipped through combat. This made the game much more difficult for me. If I attacked in this step, it would be just so much easier. I would have the treasure. They would be on less life than now. Yeah, it would be much easier game for me. I almost blew it up. But here, next turn I go for a dash again, and try to hardcast the Leyline. This can be relevant if I find the Scion of Draco, of course, but unfortunately I tapped out and I wasn't able to hold bolt there for Ragavan. But yeah, on my step I top deck Territorial Kavu and hold a bolt to kill the Ragavan. Prismatic ending wasn't really very helpful here, but yeah, they have a lot of targets. They just have to wait with the prismatic ending. Okay, opponent now goes for another Leyline hardcast. And yeah, so Ragavan doing a lot of job here. Another dash, trying to find a playable card. I don't get it. And yeah, again just repeating the Ragavan. Opponent now has removal this time, so we are in the stalemate again. Yeah, and now I find a Stoneforge Mystic, get the Cryptic Coat. Cryptic Coat now, as you could see in the last game, in the last match when I played against Cryptic Coat, it is very hard to remove, and this is just a 2-turn clock, and I get to make more of these Cryptic Coats creatures, so yeah, very hard to deal. I play a Cryptic Coat again and I have 6 damage on the field, 3 can be blocked, so very hard for opponent to survive here. Opponent goes for the Legion's End, and interestingly Legion's End doesn't remove both creatures, just one, and yeah, they concede. That is the match. Okay, so let's check out another one. This is match number 4 and win number 4, all clean 2-0 wins except that first one. Okay, so again starting with a Leyline and the Ragavan. Whenever you top deck Scion at any point, this type of hands can be very powerful. Just starting with Leyline is always like very good, even if you don't have a Scion. Okay, so here I go turn 2, opponent has Gaze, and it seems like it's Dredge, so definitely like a bad news for me, but I still maybe have some chance, not much. Yeah, so opponent puts Amoeba into play, does 2 creeping chill abilities. Luckily also finds a wonder, but doesn't put much on the field. They have amalgams though. So now I get to bounce the amoeba, attack with Ragavan, and then hold the Stoneforge. Opponent, I'm not sure what happened. Opponent still had a game here, but they just decided to quit. Maybe their hand was just so bad, I'm not sure. But yeah, opponent concedes, and let's check out the game 2. I have a Rest in Peace in the sideboard, which is like extremely good against them, and the Force of Negation is very good too. So in this situation I decided to hold a Leyline in hand, because I get to counter their turn 1 Gaze or the Cathartic Reunion, whatever, and just protect my Rest in Peace if needed. Here opponent goes for turn 1 Commercial District, puts Stinkweed Imp into their graveyard, like pretty sweet, but my hand was like really good here, so I had a Force of Negation for their reunion into turn 2 Rest in Peace, and they have a removal for Rest in Peace, but Rest in Peace already did a good job. So now I also find a clock in Cryptic Coat and Stubborn Denial in hand. Opponent here goes for Pet to exile, and I could have just let it happen, but I decide to keep up the pressure, Stubborn Denial this, and start attacking here. Go for a Scion of Draco 2. And yeah, continue attacking. Opponent can get out of this, so that is the game. Yeah, that is another win, and let's now check out the last match of this game, the only loss. It was a pretty sweet run with the new deck I just built, never tried before, so I don't have much time. A lot of you know, but some of you don't. I don't have much time lately to play, so basically all decks that you saw on my channel since the MTGO release, basically I played just a single league with all of these decks. Here I decided to keep like Island Plains hand, which is obviously not great, but yeah, didn't get a second land I needed there on time. Opponent had just a natural throne, they go for a turn 3 card, and I decide to immediately concede this. Let's check out game 2. It was just a bad hand keep, and nothing much I could do there. Tron is definitely winnable, but I didn't pack much hate. I usually pack some Tron hate, but this time really didn't. I was definitely missing some on the sideboard, so I only trimmed 2 lightning bolts for this matchup. Getting in the tier sunders. So I got to play a Territorial Kavu. Opponent goes for Expedition map, but this time my hand is pretty good. I can just go for the tier sunder, exile the Expedition map, start attacking with Kavu, and hold Stubborn Denial for their turn, and I also have the Subtlety, so pretty strong hand. Now I untap and I have both Subtlety and Counterspell available. My opponent already on 10 here. I also of course get to do the draw discard, getting rid of the extra lands. Kavu is such a powerful card in a situation like this when you're doing the attacking and discarding, drawing, finding additional good cards you need. My opponent is now on 5, and I also find the Stoneforge Mystic, which presents a lethal next turn. So they basically have two creatures they have to kill, and I have a counterspell for the ring, so that is game over. Let's check out the game 3. Basically, this was the only game I lost in this league. It was a decent hand, nothing crazy, but I have like, it was a one lander, and I decided to mulligan, not keep the one lander. I get to the 6 and I decide to keep 3 lands and bottom the worst card I had in hand. So now I have a decent start like Ragavan, Stoneforge, but I definitely needed this draw to be like a blue card for Force of Negation. That was a big minus here. Okay, so I start off with Ragavan, and if I had this blue card turn before, I would be able to just counter the expedition map. Maybe that would make this game different. But I did a lot here. My opponent is already on 11, and I have a lethal on board. But my opponent finds the ensnaring bridge last a second, and yeah, unfortunately this was not a force, it was a subtlety. So my opponent gets to resolve the one ring and pick your poison, kill my Scion. So now I find force. Unfortunately, I needed that last turn, but yeah, I was very close to surviving here. I just needed like a top deck. Unfortunately, didn't get the top deck I wanted. I needed like Prismatic Ending or Leyline Binding, something like that. And yeah, so I didn't get it, so they get to untap, draw a bunch of cards with one ring, and find this. I didn't see this card before, but it's actually sweet. Venser's Journal. It allows you to just draw as much as you want with one ring, because you gain the exact same amount of life you lose with one ring. So eventually, yeah, opponent just draws infinite cards with the ring and wins. But I was pretty close. Like for win here, I had a couple of turns to top deck, and yeah, it didn't happen. So that's it. So yeah. Okay, so this was kind of a random try. I just took like a Yeskai Murktide list. I had like my old list I had built like a year ago, and then I just said let's try fit the Leyline package here. Then I also decided to fit the Territorial Kavu, as I already had the Scion Draco, and it made sense to try to make a list a bit more aggressive, and it seemed like a very interesting mix. And Stoneforge seems very playable again. It's getting popular because of the Cryptic Coat, and Cryptic Coat is really a fine card, and it's really a nice way to get that card advantage in the later turns, just by replaying this when you have the bunch of mana. Maybe this would work better in a deck with more card selection, card advantage, more lands, but I'm also pretty happy how it works here. And yeah, so I think this just additional way to build to fit Leyline of the Guildpact into various decks, and shows that you can really do a bunch of stuff with this card. It goes in a lot of decks, and it can make them feel more competitive, more playable, like I feel with this list. I just rather play this list than just the Yeskai list with the Stoneforge and the Ragavan as my threats. And the thing you saw in this league, the match number 1. So I think I would just rather play this list than the regular Jeskai Stoneblade. It feels like crazy good when you draw into the into the combo, and having Leyline Binding is also just so good. Plus Territorial Cowboy is kind of a nice fit here, and when I said what I said in the beginning, when you find a way to fit in counterspell well in a zoo style deck, usually this type of decks end up performing very well for me. In my experience, I really like that. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to play them in the regular zoo lists, and not enough of blue mana. So yeah. Okay, that is it for today. Thank you for watching. A friendly reminder to click like, click subscribe. Let me know in the comments, do you prefer just playing a regular Jeskai list like you saw in the first match of this league, or do you prefer playing it with the Leyline package? Interested to hear about this. Okay, so again, thank you for watching and goodbye.